Hi everybody, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Veronica Dahlberg. I'm Executive Director of OLA, Ohio. We're a Latino serving organization that works throughout Northern Ohio with an office in Painesville. I'm here with a committee today that formed so quickly, really just within the past week, which includes el Comité Mexicano de Cleveland, and I want to introduce Eduardo Rodriguez, and also the Young Latino Network. We have Roberta Duarte representing that organization. And of course, members of the public, including individuals that have a long association with the Club Azteca. So I just want to outline real quick why we're here. You know, we became aware of plans to demolish this building very recently, and it just, I guess brought, when I started talking to people about it, because it took us all by surprise, we all felt kind of a little bit of a sting that, wow, this building that we all know and has been here for 121 years and represents 100 years of Mexican history here in the city of Cleveland, for it to be demolished was just a really hard thing for us to wrap our heads around. And so we started to talk, and we looked into it, and we found out that tomorrow the Cleveland Landmarks Commission was going to potentially issue a permit for the demolition. So we realized we had to move quickly, and we called together some allied groups, members of the public, to see if people were interested in saving the building, and everybody unequivocally said yes, absolutely. I think part of the problem here is that whether it's the Landmarks Commission or the city or any of these groups that are charged with preserving historic landmarks don't take into account that we too have a heritage in this city. The Mexican community has a long history in the city. And I want to just briefly touch on some of that, just so you have the context of what this building means to us. In 1920, the first Mexican immigrants in Cleveland settled in Cleveland. They had already been coming prior to that. In 1926, they informally organized a group called Club Azteca. And within a few years, they had received permission to meet in the basement of this building, which was then a hardware store. And obviously at that time, they felt the need to come together in a safe space to talk about the issues that impacted their lives, much as we do with OLA and all of our groups today. In the 30s and 40s, the Club Azteca group held fiestas and events throughout the city of Cleveland, very well attended, to raise money so that they could eventually purchase the building, which they did in 1951. They took possession of the building in 1952, and as I said in my letter to the Landmarks Commission, the Mexican community at that time was at its zenith. There were small businesses, barber shops, Mexican grocery stores. It was so vibrant of a community here. These were laborers, railroad workers in our manufacturing companies. And what happened? 1952, everything's going great. The federal government decides less than 2 years later to implement a policy called Operation Wetback that involves sweeps around the country and devastated Mexican communities. It came here to Cleveland too. And the immigration agent was quoted in 1954 in the Plain Dealer saying, "We hit the jackpot. We hit every place where these aliens could possibly be living or working." And I'm sure that much as we feel today with the rates that still continue to this day, right here in Ohio, and what it does to our families and separating children, I'm sure the members of the Club Azteca in 1954 during Operation Wetback felt that same devastation. And so it's no surprise that the club continued to, started to struggle after that. And, but it still kept holding on. The slur, wetback, that was used in the title of that federal program began to appear in the newspapers in Cleveland for years after that. As I was researching the history, it saddened me. But in 1962, there was an individual here, fresh out of the U.S. Army, came to the Club Azteca to kind of integrate into the social life it was a safe space for Mexicans at the time. Um, Before I introduce Jorge Corona, who eventually became president of the Club Azteca, I want to just tie it into my own family story, because as I researched my own family as the daughter of immigrants, my mom came from Mexico to Cleveland in 1962. And I just actually had to dig these up because these little keepsakes are the letters that my mom wrote from Cleveland to my dad, who, like many immigrants, had to travel outside of the state, different places, wherever he could get a job. So he was never home. And when I read these letters, my mom is very lonely. She doesn't drive. She doesn't speak English. She has my oldest brother who was born in Mexico, and she's pregnant. She's asking my dad for money. She's telling him she's lonely. She needs some help. That's exactly what the role of the Club Azteca was, helping people like my mom. I don't know if she ever knew about the club, but at the same time that my mom came to Cleveland, Jorge did, and like I said, he ended up meeting his wife here in the folkloric dance troupe. I don't know if you'd like to say some words, Jorge? Would you like to say a few words, or would you like to show this? Okay. Jorge is now 83 years old.
I started coming here to this club in 1962 after I was discharged from the U.S. Army. And with the years, I became president for 1 year, and then later on I became treasurer for 2 years. And it's a shame, and it's sad that we're going to lose this building that was so almost 100 years old. And so from 1962 to this time, I've been coming in here, and that's really sad. I don't know what's going to come next.
Thank you, Jorge. When we talk about Mexican contributions, which are completely, I believe, unknown, suppressed, erased, Jorge's time in the military, there's another story I tell real quick before I introduce the other speakers here today. The original founders of the Club Azteca, among the original founders, the son named Private Robert Becerra he joined the army at the age of 17. His parents were the original founders, among the original founders, along with the Delgado family, of this club. He went off to fight in World War II at the age of 17, and he was killed in action the following year. In 1945, he was killed in Germany. Now, in 1945, on September 17th, the Club Azteca hosted an event that was attended by over 1,000 people. This is in the newspaper. It included railroad workers from around the state of Ohio, diplomats from the Mexican consulate, and certainly civic leaders. And what was said at this meeting, which was quoted in the Plain Dealer article, was, if you remember at the time, that military people that came back from World War II, Mexican-American military heroes, were not allowed to be buried in the usual grave sites. There was so much rabid discrimination against them that a group of Mexican-Americans started the GI Forum. But spoken at this event in 1945, they said, all these heroes who fought so gallantly in World War II, these Mexican-American heroes, will always find a place beside the heroes of Mexican independence who also gave their blood for freedom. And I just thought, I'm sure when they made that comment, it was because of the attitudes of the day. So this space, in short, just to wrap up, to me has always been a safe space for the Mexican American community. There's such a rich history here. I have enough material to write a book. I'm actually writing an expanded history of it. But this isn't just about Ola. I wanted you to hear about some other organizations who are very active in these efforts to save the Club Azteca.
Hi everybody. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Sorry, but we are proud for language and for being Mexican or Mexican American. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Quería estar presente en el Comité Mexicano en esta acción que estamos tomando para preservar este edificio tan importante para nuestra comunidad mexicana. Es importante porque somos parte de la historia de Cleveland. Estamos aquí para realmente defender nuestro legado, nuestros 100 años de presencia en la ciudad de Cleveland. O sea, no estamos no queremos que nos borren del mapa, no queremos que reescriban la historia sin una presencia de la comunidad mexicana. Estamos aquí para alzar la voz, para decirles a las autoridades que realmente estamos aquí, somos parte de y tendrán que lidiar con nosotros. Muchas gracias.
I'm here this morning to make sure that this community, our community, is present. We want to make sure that our input is considered today, tomorrow, for any future developments here in this community. As you know, this is a historic landmark. It represents the Mexican community and Latinx community. All the endurance, perseverance, passion, culture, rich history. And I invite you all to join us in this movement. We need you. We need to save this building. Please, please, please contact the Landmark Commission. Tell them why, or ask them why are they demolishing or want to demolish this piece of history here in Cleveland. So that's all I have. Muchas gracias, and gracias to everyone that came here today to celebrate this.
And knowing how marginalized the Mexican community has been taken and treated in a marginalized way because of the narrative Hispanic. We have a rich history. To give you an example, there's a lot of opportunity with the Mexican community and the Hispanic community. And in order to simplify things, you use Hispanic. But in the case of Cleveland, Mexicans do not control the narrative. So they're being dismissed. That's why there's so many Hispanic groups, organizations, but there's only one Mexican, because we don't control the narrative. The person who controls the narrative, they're the ones who get the attention and they're the ones who get protected. We do not get protected, as is shown here, it's evident. And as far as the question about, well, is there any other groups? Were there any attempts? There were attempts, and I was part of those attempts. I was on 2 previous committees to save the Club Azteca. And that's why you saw me come up here, because I felt I was going to be marginalized, whether accidental or not. I needed to be heard, because I have a lot of the answers that with either Cleveland State and I've worked with OLA on different initiatives, including voter registration for Mexicans and Latinos. So I will take questions if you want to ask, because I also am part of a family and an officer here. I was an officer here at the Club Azteca in one of its heydays, when Zulema Carrion was president, when Jorge Corona is my stepdad. Alex here is my brother. We have 50 years plus in the Club Azteca. That's something you didn't know about, and now you do. I'm a representative of the entire era of the Azteca Club and the Mexican community. I represent the past, and more recent past, I imagine, but through my mother, who passed away a few years ago. She was a bona fide leader in the community. Should be mentioned in the same tone as Zulema Carrion, who is a Mexican icon. My mother, Amalia Galvan Corona Saldaña, she's a Mexican icon, and you'll be hearing more from her, because I also am documenting the Mexican community, and so all this is going to be with pictures and folders, and I have been involved in a lot of events in Cleveland, because I wanted to connect the Mexican community with these organizations like JUMP. If you see here, Block Group, that's with City Club. There's a Tower City, the conversion. One of my initiatives was to actually get together with Ernie Moreno, the director of that project. These are things that are new, but we won't have a chance if this is torn down. We will be erased from the memories of Cleveland, and you will be able to say, Hispanic club over there, Hispanic club, but you will not be able to say Mexican club over there. Here, this is tied to the efforts here to make this and Cleveland more multicultural, more multiculturally friendly. These are the things and the words that the politicians, civic leaders are advocating and living by. But this, by the demolition of this building, those end up being lies and just slogans. We are multicultural. We are 200 million strong. Because if you remember, we at one time were tied. Mexico and the United States are now intertangled because of the Mexican-American War. Half of Mexico was taken. So there's still Mexicans in that part of the country. And that's, along with Mexico, that's 200 million in the same hemisphere, that's a lot of talent to ignore. Here you have the Capitol Theater. I know the history. I used to live here for 30 years, and I used to attend it. So I know how this is developing and how this is overtaking. The development here is, there's a word for it. Gentrification. Gentrification is more important to this city than culture. If that's the case, there are much larger cities that people can go to if they want to be affected in a gentrified way, right?
To Angel's point, you know, the development was going to be called Waverly and Oak, and this, what they said on their website was so that we can name it to what it once was back in the day. And we questioned, like, well, does that mean what it once was before the Latino neighborhoods were here? Because then that's a total erasure. But that is in fact what was stated, that the name was to harken back to the old days, which I believe really kind of signifies before this neighborhood was 30 to 40% Latino.
Yeah,
Our goal really is to save this building. When people say, what do you want to come out of this? We want to save the building because that's why we have commissions and organizations that are preserving the history. And like Roberto said, why is this not valued enough to be saved? Why was this going to be erased? Because in erasing this history, it keeps us in a perpetual state as outsiders, that we don't belong here. Because you're erasing this 100+ years present. So again, so many other narratives, immigrant narratives, are elevated in Cleveland and preserved, and we would like our narrative to be elevated and preserved as well in saving of this building. And so to whoever the powers may be that can make that happen, if this building is demolished, it will be a terrible, terrible mistake for the city of Cleveland, because it will be irrevocably destroying a part of the fabric that makes Cleveland so special. And it does include the Mexican community. And today, when we have almost 50,000 Latinos in the city of Cleveland, 10% of whom are of Mexican heritage, we deserve to have our monuments and our historic landmarks as well. And no, putting a plaque on the site is not going to do. We want to save the building. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We do have a letter that was submitted to the Landmarks Commission that details some of this history so that we could get it on the permanent record. It is a public record, and we could submit it to anybody who wants it. If you want to pull quotes from it or whatever information, it does include a lot of information in there. So with that said, we'll wrap it up because we don't want to be too much in an enclosed space. You're welcome to speak with the public or any individuals who want to speak out, but in terms of our committee, that concludes our time. Gracias a los que... We have over here the folkloric dance troupe from all the way from Painesville. They perform City Hall and so many different events throughout Northern Ohio, and I just want to give them an applause for promoting Mexican culture was a big part of the Club Azteca. Are there any